See you in 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. Milton, are you there? There you are. Welcome, everybody. This is Walker. I'm the disembodied voice.
Okay. Are you ready for us to start?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Isn't this weird? Anyway, so welcome everybody. Um, we're all very pleased to be with Sharon again. We had such a good time last month. We decided to come back together again this month and continue conversations that the two of us have been having for years now in a public forum. Um, I, I, one of the things that I find useful, and it's a question. And I was reading Sharon's book again, and it was a question that was really well answered. I thought of a quote for her. I've always said to actors, start every play as if you know nothing, and just it's like, don't assume that because you're 21 and the character is 21 that you know what it's like. Just to really look at it fresh. And so when I was rereading Sharon's book recently, I found a quote that I thought would be is very appropriate, and that I would start the session today with. Um, what she said in her book is, read the text, do not act anything. This is not a cold reading or an audition. You are reading for the facts. If you rush into the acting before you've identified what you need to know for your performances, you risk getting stuck in an interpretation that may not serve you well. Focus only on making clear the meanings of the words and observing any interesting features in the text. And I think that is such a wise way to look at text. I I feel like there is this natural tendency to read the text and immediately decide how to perform it. I think it's human nature. It's like you read it and you say, "Oh, I know how to play that." And so the idea that you just say, "Okay, let me just take this in." A student said to me the other day, and he said, "And so you want us to stand back and look at it?" And I thought that was very good. It's just like, just look at it, read it. Don't decide how you're going to perform it. Don't decide what the character is, and just sit back and look at it and say, "Okay, what is that? What is that?" And all sorts of things appear. That's an interesting way that person talks. And the fact that you say, "Oh, that's interesting." Or if you're doing a David Mamet play, you say, "Oh, he swears a lot." But the thing is, at least you look at it and identify it, and then begin your work. And I thought that was great, Sharon. I thought it was really good just to summarize it so clearly.
Yeah,
A methodology for starting.
yeah, reading for the facts and not making snap judgments is so hard because our brains work so fast. And sometimes with my own actors that I work with, the tendency is not even to go to rush to the how do I play this? Sometimes the tendency is even more quick on I like this or I don't like this. And taste, liking something, is coming from so many things that are hitting you about the text that I always have to stop people and say, wait, wait, wait. What makes you say that? What specifically about the text makes you say, I like this or I don't like this? Let's take the taste out of it. But I want to, sort of mirror you, Milton, because I have a passage here from another book that I have on my shelf that I like to read. And I pulled out one passage from it to read for you, and because I think it goes to the whole notion of reading for the facts as well to kick this off. And I'm going to give it a try here. I typed it for my own ease in reading. Here's what you write. A play is about something. It is about an idea, a universal idea. One of the biggest struggles we have as actors is both figuring out what the theme is and then understanding the big idea and lifting ourselves up to those ideas. In short, you and I, in our writings, Milton, are agreeing that we have to read for the facts, reading for the facts about how you perform, and also reading for the facts for the big ideas about why we bother to do this role or do this play to begin with. And I love the fact that if we start from nothing, from reading for the facts, and interpreting those facts before we make any decisions, what we get to are the big ideas in the play, and those big ideas lead us to, and I'm quoting you again, the joy of acting, which you say allows you to expand your own horizons. It's not about playing yourself, it's about hooking yourself to the experience in the play that you get through these facts that is broadening for you yourself. And that for me is the joy of acting.
I agree. I think it's so interesting how much you learn from doing every single play you do.
Yes,
And
and
how
you
much
only learn if you stop worrying so much at the first read about what it is you have to do and really involve yourself with what you're being asked to do.
yeah, yes. And I think it kind of echoes the idea that the playwright has something to say in the playwright. If it's a really good play, it's brilliant. I mean, it's and so we the idea of coming up to the size of the idea tells you I got to figure out what this play is about. I have to interpret this play and really see what it is. I do think we have a tendency, if we're not careful, um, and I think this was always the danger about pulling the play down to the actor by pulling the play down and making it about me and my experience. And
Mhm.
I think that makes it not so much fun. I think it's suddenly, if we're not careful, plays are about nothing, and and uh, and I think that's a danger. I think it's certainly a danger we have at the moment.
Mhm. Mhm. This big idea, this theme, what are we doing this for? Why do we want to do this play, this role? How is it going to expand us? I think that's about this bigger overarching idea of why we act that Stanislavski called the sverhzadacha in Russian, the super problem, the super objective, the super task, however you want to translate zadacha, which we talked about last time. But this notion that everything that's little in the play, on the very detail, the devil in the details, all of that adds up to this bigger issue of why we do this in the first place. What is it that we want to share with our audiences through our work? The details add up to the big ideas.
And I think I always miss the opportunity. I always think at some particular point, let's put into words, why are we doing this play?
Mm-hmm,
It- it-
exactly.
why are we doing this play?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And why are we doing it today? Because if we do
Yeah.
a classic play, we're talking to today's audiences. So every time we do a play, it's new for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Well, I'm really happy to be back with you to pick up where we left off. I don't know if everybody here was there last time, so it's not, so for us it's picking up. So we do invite everybody to ask questions and help us shape our conversation based on what you guys want to hear for today's audience. Here today now, that's the motto.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate too that this is a conversation. It's not an interview, and we really want you to be part of it. So
Absolutely.
don't be shy about asking questions. I have a million questions. I'm sure you do too. So just type them into the chat box, and
And don't be afraid to interrupt us.
yeah, don't be afraid
Yeah.
to interrupt. Don't be afraid to ask something you think it might be perceived as stupid. If there's no stupid questions, just type it on in.
All right. I think there was a question or two in there already. No, Walker?
No, not yet, but that's
I
why
thought I
we.
saw one
I've
from
got them.
Carson.
Oh yeah, that's right. Carson asked. Thank you.
Yeah,
Carson
Carson
said,
asked a question.
"Here we go." So I'm gonna put it up on the screen. You talked a lot last time about experiencing. How do you get there?
Yeah, thank you, Carson, for asking that. I'm going to backtrack a little because the word experiencing is what a lot of acting teachers call living the role. And Stanislavski actually didn't say live your role. He said experience your role as you perform it. So, one of the things about experiencing that I want to make sure everybody is aware of when they talk to me about Stanislavski is that the notion of living a role is a mistranslation. Because what Stanislavski says is that the experience of performing a role includes the play, it includes your place in the play, the circumstances in the play, but it also doesn't pretend that you are living in your character's circumstances so much that you forget that you're also an actor who is conveying the experience of the character to the audience. So as you perform, you're experiencing wearing the clothes on your back that the costume designer has given you. You're experiencing the direction that the director has given you. It is a whole package that creates your performance, which would be distinct and different. Your experience of the role is yours and not the same as any other actor playing maybe even the same role. So that experiencing is the drug that we want. It's that sense as actors that we are so involved in the performance that we were giving that it's as if time stops for us for this moment. And I think every actor has had this great joy in a role, maybe not every time we've acted, but this sense that everything is working right for us. All our training, the play feels easy, the costumes feel right, the lights hit us just right, and the audience is with us, and we feel like, yes, 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 this is why we act, for this experiencing. And so I just wanted to reiterate it. I was listening just yesterday to an old interview with Alan Arkin on Fresh Air, and Alan Arkin said that there was one time on Broadway where he felt so transformed into the role and so involved in the performance of a role he was playing that he said that he experienced for the first time the drug that made him an addict for acting. And when the interviewer asked him, well, what do you really mean by that? He said, well, it's like an athlete who says they're in the zone. He said, once I felt like I was in the zone with this role, I just wanted to do there and get there every time. So I just wanted to backtrack for you, Carson, to make sure we know what we're talking about when we're talking about experiencing. And how do you get there? The devil is always in the details for me. You do the work. You start where Milton today is starting us off, reading for the facts. What is it that you were going to have to project in your role? What are the facts on the page? Take the taste out of it for a moment and look at where we start, and then do the work. Do the work of your training and everything you can to get the fullest performance you can. Milton, I think you want to add something here.
Yeah, no, I think it's look, it's the issue here, as Stella Adler always said, was facts are death to the actor until they're fed through the imagination and become the experience of the facts. So I think we have to be aware how many different ways that we have of getting to the experience of the facts. I happen to be a very, very big advocate of talking out everything. It's been years since I had actors write out things. And I also, as one of my students said the other day, I could, in my mind, I could really see what I was going to do. And I also think that's a disaster. But I think when we start to talk it out and talk out with in mind that I'm not just reporting, I'm not just doing a 7th grade report on the, the the moon, that I'm thinking about, I'm talking out in a way that I am trying to connect to what that experience is, and you layer it on. I think another problem that we sometimes have is we think, well, if I got it once, now I've got it. And okay, yeah, I did that. And so, and you keep going back to it and you keep adding to it, which is, it's terrific. I think if I get dry, I say, oh, let me go back and rebuild what I built before, because what I find is that in having these little etudes, as we've now started calling them in the last few years, which are like improvisations, where I'm just talking out as the character and talking out. And sometimes I'm not ready to talk out as the character. I'm just talking out maybe what I think it's about. You know, I don't know what you think, Sharon. I always sort of think
I'm looking at a question by Ramon Perez right now, asking about how you approach acting through personal experiences too. And what I just want to say about that, if I might, because it's taught, you're hedging into it already, with this idea that we talk through the voice of the character in order to figure out what's going on. Stanislavski actually said, Ramon, if this is helpful, that you never walk away from yourself. Just like we experience life, we don't really worry about very much what we're feeling. We're just in the present, and what we react to and what we are experiencing happens to us. So first of all, I don't think running out of feelings is something to worry about, because we're human beings and we just gush them. But the idea of the personal is important here, because Stanislavski says that, yes, you always use yourself, but yourself can be personal experiences, yes, but they can be experiences that you understand through empathy with others as well. We broaden ourselves and we broaden our ability to feel, not only by being embroiled in what our own personal experiences are, but in the experiences of those around us, in how art makes us feel. He used to say that the best way to work on emotional memory is to go to museums, to read a lot of books, to read the newspapers daily, to read history. And the more we know about human experience in general, the more we have to draw upon when we're in a role, and that the role's facts are asking us to go to a certain place. Does that sort of answer your question, Ramon?
Let me just add to that, Sharon. Many years ago, I worked on a film that Julie Harris was in. She was a Tony Award-winning actress, and she'd worked forever. And she said to me one night at dinner, she said, "You know, Milton, I never went to college, but I feel as if I got a master's degree with every part that I did." And I think that's what you're talking about, is we expand our world so much. And I think we begin to see both our character in that world and our own personal relationship to the world. And I think that's really important. I think
Right. But
we
you don't have to, you don't always have to, and mostly you shouldn't use personal memories that are traumatic, that are going to hurt you in the process, because acting is an art and it's not a therapy. And so you can use your personal experiences if they really help you, but they shouldn't be hurting you. And empathy sometimes, and imagination sometimes, can feed your feelings, can feed your empathy, can feed your compassion in a way that is generative for the art and generative for the role. And I think that sometimes in the United States, we get a little bit too worried when we think about, oh, I have to use my personal experiences, meaning I have to use my personal traumas, which Stanislavski never, ever wanted actors to do. He always worried about the mental hygiene, as he put it, of his actors, mental health today. That we shouldn't be hurting ourselves or abusing ourselves by reliving trauma if we think that that's going to make us into a better actor. It only makes us into a more self-involved actor, rather than one who can speak out to the audience and connect with people in a wider way.
And I also think it's scary. I I I notice sometimes that if actors have relied too much on their own experience, when they arrive at a moment in a play where that experience existed, they shy away from it. And so it's like you're playing a dual thing. You're playing me, and I'm playing my character. Um, how else do you? I mean, I like the idea that Pasquale said, what is the link between imagination and authentic experience? I'm not sure the word authentic experience is something but I think that's one of the joys, is that the more that you use your imagination. Um, I took a class many years ago when somebody said the first thing you choose is going to be a cliche. It comes out of a section of your brain where everything you've ever seen in every movie and TV show is stuck. So I sort of go through, if I'm talking out the past, if I'm talking out um, the circumstance that I'm in, I'll make a choice, and then I'll make another choice, and then I'll make another choice. And I find that the imagination starts to fly. And suddenly I have one of those gotcha moments where you say, "Oh, that's it. That's it. I love that. I love that." And you start to see it. And it's like suddenly, it's almost like a child. It's almost like a child in a fairy tale or a nursery rhyme. you start to believe it, and
Right. That's a great question, answer, I think, to Pasquale's question about the link between imagination and an authentic experience, Milton.
yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yep.
It's
Mm-hmm.
God. It's the road in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a it's definitely a road in. There are a lot of there's so many areas of acting. There was a moment years ago with I looked in a note that some teacher given me that was an assistant of Stella's, and there was a triangle, and on the triangle was character, circumstance, and action, and so it was so overly simplistic, but it sort of said, well, there's a character, they're in a circumstance, they're someplace, and they're playing an action. And I showed it to Stella and I said, did you say this? And she sort of looked and said, well, it's interesting, isn't it? And then years later, I put a circle around it that said theme. But there are so many areas that we go to when we look at the character, and it may not be the first thing that you get when you read the script.
Mm-hmm. Well,
It
you're edging into something, and Carson, you're asking this question as well, about how do universal circumstances feed into the character's behavior, because you're edging to that here too. Let's get more pragmatic here, because one of the things, I think we're talking in big ideas. There's a big idea in a play, there's a big theme, the character's circumstances, how do our personal, experiences fit into the experience of the performance. I mean, we could get more concrete here, because I think that, to answer this question, Carson, it's like the devil for me is always in the details. You start with the facts, and those facts start to reveal something about the wider world of the play, the wider personality of the character, all of this. So I'm going to give you, I'm just going back to a big classic now, Doll's House, which was done on Broadway recently, in a uniquely new way. But I'm going to go back to the classic and the facts. So Nora has a major problem that she has to address throughout the whole play, or most of the play, what we might call her super problem, the big idea of the play, something like that, which is that her husband got very ill with tuberculosis, and she had to find a way to save his life and to get him the medical treatment he needed. And in order to do that, she actually went to get a bank loan, which, as a woman in this period of time, she could not herself sign the request or the application for a loan, because women were not in her society allowed to do with what women are allowed to do today. So she forged her father's signature in, and he since died. He had just died, so she couldn't get her father to sign it with her. So she forged her father's signature in order to get the money to take her husband to get medical treatment. And she saved his life by committing a crime. This is all prior to the beginning of the play. These are reading for the facts. You have to know all these things to play Nora. So let's get more concrete about this now. How do these devil in the details take you to the big ideas in this play? And how would you play Nora in this sense? Well, first of all, Nora was ballsy enough, excuse my language here, to break the law for the love of her husband. And she risked doing something that was illegal. It's not probably true that every woman in her circumstances would have made that same choice. So we start to understand Nora as somebody who has a real backbone and is willing to bend the rules of her society to get what is important and passionate for her, which is the love of her husband. And now we can start to see that by looking at the facts, we start to see that she has a problem now as the play goes on. She has to hide her crime from everyone, including her husband, who doesn't understand what she did for him. And for her best friend, their best friend, Dr. Rank, who she looks to for support in the play. Now, I'm not going to go through every scene, but every scene, in effect, in Doll's House is a way for Nora to try to cope with the need she has now to hide her illegal act that she did out of love for her husband, in the face of her husband not knowing what she did, not understanding the sacrifice, and feeling instead that somehow this is that she should be the good little girl that the society determines. Now, I don't know if you want to add to this, Milton, but I'm
Yeah, well, let
giving
me
this
just say
example. It's not a
that,
play I've read recently, so I may be a little bit foggy.
no, but listen, here's an important thing that you said, and this is one of the things that I think that we skip over, is really understanding what she did. And this is when I think this is when you have to sort of step back and say, what kind of woman did that?
Right. And
And,
this
and,
is
and
how
we
it leads to the universal. I just want to finish this thought, Carson, because, by looking at what she did, we have to understand that she lives in a society that is not ours, but that our sense of the universality of the message of what one can and can't do in a society matters still to us.
and that's
I
that's
also think that it leads to the universal idea of what it means to love as an action that you do for somebody you love, and not simply an abstract. So, just to put the point on what I was saying, the devil is always for me in the details. We get to the universal through the tiny little facts that make us understand what the universal is. It's kind of like a chicken and an egg issue. If we start too quickly with this is a feminist play about a woman who wants to look at the constraints of a marriage, we might miss some of the big social implications, and we might even miss the love. So that's basically my point here.
Sharon, I just want to jump in here
I'm
quick
sorry
because
to interrupt my Milton. So, you go on with your thing. I just wanted to make the final little hitch there.
yeah, no, please continue. I just thought it would be a perfect opportunity to include this question, which I am adding because I got it somewhere else on a different platform. But this is about film and TV, and that you're not always dealing with a big idea. At least it's not apparent immediately. So what do you do in those cases? How do you do big work when your perception of the project is that it's not a big show, it's not a big film, there's no big idea in sight?
Yeah. Do you want
uh,
to start with that, Milton?
oh God. Well, of course we have it all the time, but I just look the let me just say about that. We all hope to do big plays. We all hope to do Doll's House. We all hope to do important plays. The number of times that a TV actor attempts to do plays on Broadway is because that's what's fulfilling. So the ability to look at Nora and look at a woman that would do that and be able to get a character out of that, it is like, that's huge. When you get to something like television, I mean, and it's, again, you're looking at the facts. And if you're reading it, looking at the facts and see what they tell you. And then I think sometimes you can get a big idea. It's like I had a student who played a Russian on Madam Secretary, and I worked with him on the audition. And what we worked on was, what does it mean to be a Russian? What 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 is the feeling about Mother Russia? And oddly enough, that's all he needed. I mean, it's like it immediately having a piece of information that had to do with the size of an idea gave him a place to jump. Same thing from somebody else. They said, uh, um, I was playing, I have this audition where I do this sort of thing, and somebody has killed somebody in my family. And I said, well, look at the idea of family. That's an idea. And it's not maybe Long Day's Journey into Night family, but it is the idea of family. And what that does, I think, is to help you make choices to feed the piece that you're doing, no matter what it is. Because otherwise, what you're going to be doing is grabbing for straws. You're going to be saying, "Oh, well, I'm playing that. Oh, I'm playing that," and what you're doing is you're grabbing for something that, yes, is a cliche. And I mean, I have little notes about my life: declare a war on cliches. And the question is, how do you do that? And so what you're looking for, I think, is a road in. And by looking at the facts and exploring what the roads in might be, opens you up.
Yeah. I used to teach a class with a colleague, a co taught class called classical acting for modern media, and the whole point, the whole theory behind it was that if we know the classics, we can look at film and TV scripts from the lens of understanding how we as actors can value add to scripts that might not be as well written as an Ibsen play or a Chekhov play. Because the more we know in terms of dramatic writing, the more we can understand how we can fit the scripts we work on with films and TV shows into these bigger ideas. And as you say, family is always a big idea. There's no, I mean, Tolstoy started, I believe, Anna Karenina with a sentence that always registers for me, that every happy family is happy like every other happy family, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own unique way. And families are always something to go to, but there are always issues like Madam Secretary. How much bigger an issue you can get than dealing with cross-cultural miscommunications and spyings and governments and stuff. When we start to look and we take seriously what's on the page, we're always going to elevate even a very small, we as actors can, if we think this way, elevate the work we do to make the people who watch our work say, ah, yes, I get it. It's something that I can relate to. This is something I understand why there's a story about this, why we need a story about this, because we as actors can elevate the scripts by looking carefully at the facts and linking it to the experience we have, not only as people, but as actors, with classics, with art in other ways.
I
I
notice
hope
it a
that
lot.
helps. Huh?
No, but I do know. I think you're exactly right. I notice it a lot with the small parts in TV series. Sometimes I
Oh,
think that the series regulars, are not necessarily the best actors in the world, but there's somebody that you say, oh yes, an audience will watch them for
right.
2 years. But these small parts where
Yes.
somebody comes in for a one-off part, it's
Oh, yeah,
amazing.
and in films, day players. I mean, honestly, those small parts and day players are the ones where the actors have to be the most creative, because few directors are going to worry about coaching you on a small part. So you come in ready, you come in to do your work, and what if you're good, you stay in the film. Otherwise you're on the cutting room floor. The small parts sometimes give actors tremendous agency, much more than some of the
I
leads do.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
and the more that you have the experience of having done really big plays, the more you have to draw from.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
and also, listen, the technique is there to give you confidence, and confidence walks in the door, or we can see it on the tape. But I mean, that's really and it's like once you've worked on these big plays, then you have a piece of you have a play and you look at it, and you have a part, and you say, oh, I know what to do with that. I actually, I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed over the past couple of years working with actors on these, like one scene parts,
They're great.
because you can do anything with them. And it's almost like you really do have the opportunity to show them what they're looking for,
Correct.
rather rather than coming in and saying, I'm going to give them what I think they're looking for. Show them. And it's because you're able to make really interesting choices.
This is a technique question from Daniel, that Milton, you talk in your book about exercises to build the past of a character. Can you talk more about some of those exercises and how to best implement them when you're prepping for a role?
I have to say that when I was very, very disciplined, when I was studying with Stella Adler and I had a script, I would go through and underline every line that had a past. Um, I was later not so disciplined, but I knew that I had to make that past real. And oh, that to me is the joy of understanding that uh, you kind of start. I like talking out, and I like looking at, if I'm there are things that I know that the text gives me, I have to make believable. If I'm playing Anne in All My Sons, and I know that Anne moved to New York, and I find myself saying, why would I move to New York? What do I think was going on with her? And then again, I do the same thing Sharon's talking about with Nora. I have to talk out and say, well, her father is in jail for having been part of killing 21 men with faulty airline parts. And I allow myself, without making huge decisions, to just layer it in and say, oh, I begin to understand that. Yes, I could see why she would want to leave town, where she had been living. And I always, for me, I always have to start in the third person. I start. I know everybody. Teachers will always say, no, work in the first person. It was always uncomfortable for me to work in the first person because I knew I was lying, and so I would start with for some reason, I'm now working on the character of Anne. Don't ask. But at any rate, but I would talk as she, and then she would do this, and she would do that, and then eventually I would find myself saying, and then I thought, and then I did, and so it really is kind of sitting and not forcing a performance, but just talking out what I can believe. In an odd sense, I love Harold Clurman's book called Lies Like Truth. I think it's a great, great description of acting. It's a lie that sounds like the truth. And if you use that metaphor or analogy, and when you tell a lie, the first time you tell the lie, you're very, very tepid about it. And then when you go back to it, you get a little bit more detail. Sharon's Devil. And then the next time you go back to it, you get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more detailed. And so suddenly, the lie that you told over breakfast, by the end of the day, you actually believe happened. And it's just because you keep getting back to it. It's you keep coming back to it. And I think as long as you don't demand a performance out of the first time you work and just really think to yourself, okay, I can believe this much. I can believe this much today. And then I have to figure out a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's just a matter of, I think, slowly looking at the facts and building them so that I can begin to get the experience of the fact. I don't know, Sharon, other ideas?
No, there's I think the main thing is when you're looking at the past of the character to figure out what part of the past of the character helps you with the present of the character. You may not need to know whether they were born in a hospital or at home if it doesn't affect your actions. I think Stanislavski is always, especially toward the end of his life, aware that whatever we do to prepare should be helpful and pragmatic to the work we're doing. It's not like we have to, cross every I and dot every T about every moment that this person lived, but something that brings us into it. But there's Stanislavski worked with a playwright. Maybe some of you know this. He co-founded the Moscow Art Theater with Stanislavski. His name is a very difficult Russian name, Vladimir Nemirovich Danchenko. Nemirovich Danchenko was the one, as a director, who wanted to think in terms of what he called a second plane. It's not a great term. I think it's a confusing term. I've been struggling to find a better way to talk about it. It's a little bit like the idea of backstory in cinema, that there is a second plane of experience. Here's the first plane, which is the play that we're telling, the story we're telling. It's right here in the foreground. It's what we're looking at. And then behind it is this kind of second plane, a kind of background, which is informing what we're seeing in the front, in the foreground. And that's where character autobiography, where history of, say, the social times, all of that kind of sits and lies. I think it's a little bit different than the cinematic idea of backstory, because backstory is more about filling in the details of the story, whereas second plane can be much more global. It can be more about the ethos of a time under which the play takes place, or what it meant, if you were, again, going back to Doll's House for a second, to be a woman in a time where you had no right to own property or to borrow money, and how does that ethos sort of create assumptions about people. So I'm just adding that here. Maybe I'm complicating it, because I think the autobiography, the past of a character, fits into that. I've been looking a lot at Black Panther lately, and the scene in which um, Forrest Whitaker's character, the priest Zori, is telling T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, the first time about the fact that his father um, hid the birth of his nephew from Wakanda, and T'Challa has to face the fact that his uncle has betrayed the country, and that his father has hidden that betrayal by hiding a nephew who turns out to be Killmonger. Okay, this is the backstory of Black Panther, right? And it's a huge moment in the film, if everybody's been, remembers the film, because this is the time T'Challa as king comes to realize that the whole country that he is running is founded on a kind of lie. And how does he move forward from that? It's a hugely emotional story. So how does somebody like a Chadwick Boseman need enough past memories? Zuri Whitaker, Forrest Whitaker, if you're playing that role, needs to have a visual imagination of the betrayal and the hiding, the decision to leave the child behind. And that visual imagination feeds into the film as a past autobiography that is absolutely necessary to playing that role. T'Challa doesn't have that past memory, but he has to have a memory of his father that is faulty, that in that moment needs correction by Zuri. So the idea of a second plane and a backstory can be different for each of the people playing these characters within the film, even though the backstory of the film is similar for everyone in the film. Does this make any sense, what I'm saying here?
Well, it's I think it's slightly complicated.
Yeah,
But
because I'm throwing in a new,
I know. But here's the thing. I think you have to always know that you know more than your character knows, and that's important. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like you may know that the character is the theme. The character doesn't know that he's
Right,
the theme. He's just playing it. There,
right.
and you do have to have a whole sense of an entire play.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really
Yes.
important. I mean, look, the
Yes.
joy of a
And then
play anyway is
when you prep your autobiography, you have to pick and choose from what you know
yes, and
to
figure out
help
how
you
it,
make the work of your character come to life through the details of what
yes,
it is you know and
yes.
what you don't know.
And a lot of the talent, I think, is figuring out how it fits into the story. You build a pass that is experiential based on how it fits into the story. You certainly know the whole plot. I mean,
Yep.
that's the joy of a film or a play. We know that Nora is going to leave at the end of Doll's House. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a surprise.
No.
And you playing Nora will know that going into it. And it's actually helpful knowing that because you know where it's leading. You're not wandering around. It's nothing like real life where you never know what's going to happen.
Yes,
Um,
but in the moment of performance, we have what the 1920s American actor William Gillette, who the first Sherlock Holmes reminds us he's the one who created the idea of the illusion of the first time.
yes. Yeah.
Illusion of the first time, even though we know. How are we doing, Walker?
We're good. We've got about 7 minutes left, and
Oh,
I just
wow.
I want to throw one thing out. You know, when we're first reading a script and we're just registering impressions and
Hmm.
going slow, and we're not jumping to a performance. What do you think about the judgments that we have as actors that maybe we're not even aware of, that maybe become blind spots? And so like we start infusing our point of view of the world or our point of view of the character in the character's point of view of the world that they're in. This is something I've never heard you talk about, Sharon. Milton, I've heard you talk about it, but it's been a while. So
Well, just don't. No, I'm kidding. Uh, don't do that.
Yeah.
Bad Walker.
Yeah,
I,
there's a passage I love from Stanislavski's second book, and I make my students always read it. And but it's translated as the word prejudices. That we can't have prejudices when we go into reading a text for the first time. And the truth is that modern scholars tell us that there's no way we can avoid prejudices. But what I mean by prejudices is this. That any text lives within other texts. So if we know it's a comedy, we immediately have prejudices about what makes a comedy. If it's Hamlet, we have a lot of prejudices because we've seen other people play the role. It's so famous that we may have known the story before we even read the play. And then Lord help us if we're actors who are doing the same role twice, because now we also have the prejudice of having remembered what we did the first time. And to put all those things out of our head and read the play fresh with new eyes is not easy. So I think for me, Walker, and I don't know what Milton has said in the past, but I think for me, you know, you're never going to get rid of, you know, anything that's springing to your mind like that. All you can do is remind yourself and ask yourself at every point, well, why do I know that? What in the text makes me think that? And if you can point to something in the text that made you think, oh, this was funny, or this was not funny, or this was, you know, something that happened in the past. Well, how do you know that happened in the past? Can you point to the line? There's something else that I like to use, which is called fixed and open clues. Fixed clues are what's really on the page that you can go back and look at. And the open clues is what you use when you're reading to jump to conclusions, to jump to impressions, because you're filling in the gaps of things you don't know. And our minds are so quick to fill in those gaps that, of course, we're not going to be able to get any of it out, all of it out. All we can do is be honest with ourselves when we're reading and say, well, how do I know that? Oh, it's not in what I read, but I like it. So I'm going to keep it.
I think that I think
Does
it's
that
something.
make sense?
Well, no, but and just to add to that, I think a lot of it is something we have to guard against.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in other words, you say as soon as you see he was a Vietnam vet, you immediately think, oh, he must have PTSD. It's like we jump so quickly to conclusions, and as opposed to sitting back and saying, okay, stop, you don't know that. And I think the important thing that is on what line of dialogue do you get that in do you get that information? I mean, I think you always have to say, where in the text do you get that? What in the text tells you that might be true? I mean, that's certainly part of it. And also, some actors love the idea of playing a character they hate. I
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, you say, "Oh God, he is such an asshole." I love playing that, and so I don't know. Sometimes you have to move into to that. I mean, I really seriously, a brilliant actress I know. I wanted to. I wanted her to do Glass Menagerie, and she said, "Oh, I hate women like that." And I thought, "What are you talking about? You're going to give up Amanda?" Um, she ended up doing Mary Tyrone instead, but um, bu- but yes, I think in answer to your question, it's probably impossible for us to come without any. Um, yes, they do have the best lines. Um, it's very difficult for us to come with no prejudices. We just have to be very aware of ourselves and be very
Right. And
careful about them.
this is one of the things I love about acting as opposed to a more solitary kind of work, because when we actually work with other people on roles, they see things we didn't see. We can share. Um, they can, they can sometimes ask a question that makes us go, "Oh, how did I know that? Why did I jump to that?" And that's part of, for
Mm.
me, the joy of rehearsal is sharing perspectives on the facts, sharing, a work that's collaborative with each other.
Yeah, it is the joy of rehearsal, and I think there's probably another session with a bunch of actors who had to prepare stuff overnight where you
Of
don't have the
course,
joy. You don't have the joy of
of
rehearsal.
course.
But in the best of all possible worlds, the idea that there is a conversation about the play, what the play is about, it just expands you.
Hmm.
Um, all right, I think that's um, us.
It's never ending, Milton, when
I
we get
know it
together.
really
And the
it,
art is it's such a complicated, wonderful endeavor,
and
acting
it's never
is.
and it really is.
And it's never going to come to an end, hopefully never come to an end, because it's an
And,
art
and
that's going to keep going on.
and anytime anybody makes it sound sensible and easy, it just isn't. I'm constantly amazed at how many years it takes for something to suddenly make sense, and you go, oh wow, why did it take so long? And But the joy of it is that you just keep looking for it and keep looking for it and keep looking for it. You keep finding wonderful pieces of information that are just that are thrilling. Walker, why don't you join us so people can see who you are, so you're not just a voice in the background?
Sure. Hi,
Yay.
everybody. By the way, Deb Margolin just commented, Sharon and Milton, no one understands acting as they do. So
Or Deb,
true.
or Deb. I've stolen much from Deb. Well, thank you all for joining us. Um, Bella, I see you're here. I think so I've stolen stuff from Bella. Um, so anyway, we will do this again, and we will get together and keep your questions coming, and we will all somehow or another somehow figure this out.
Yes, this is a series, by the way. So stay tuned for more. We'll be doing these, I think, once a month is the plan. So
Yeah, thank you for hosting, Walker.
my pleasure, as
Yes, and
always.
helping through the mechanics.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great weekend.